Genuinely, it's an honor to get to sit and have a conversation.
Absolutely.
And then I thought I would say why. And I was thinking, one of the things that I love about Omari is that no matter what the conversation is, I grow from it. And that to me is the marker of a good conversation, and that he wins well, he wins an argument well. There's no gloating. And there's just kind of a joy that he's shared what he had to share. That's my feeling. And he loses well. He's very gracious when he changes his opinion and doesn't like hold a resentment or hold on. And so then there's just this process where you think about coming together with this human being, and you think about the process of growth, and that to me is a part of how I think we're going to make it through these times. I guess all times are crazy. It's samsara. It's the nature of it. It does seem particularly fanciful in its craziness right now. But that to me is the key element, is when both people can transceive in that way, then you look forward to different information entering your sphere, because, and this is what another part of what I was thinking is, he doesn't have what I would call superior inferiority. And what I mean by this, what I mean by this is, because we get into all different types of arenas of spheres that we're talking about. So I just saw a video, and it was LGBTQ plus folks, and there was some joke about the way that they express. And then they did it in a much more provocateur way to incite, rather than to bridge connection. And so, back in my day of, activist or queer training, feminine training, like, we were, on the one hand, we were revolutionary, but we didn't aim to provoke in such a way that we alienated. Much of my training, you can tell from my writing, et cetera, is about how do you bridge it? How do you bridge difference without losing yourself? That's really, and so we have it that it's either, bless you, that it's either or. Either you're going to just acquiesce and accommodate, give in to the man, or now we have it that you're going to aggress and incite. And then one of the things that I often say is that, if you get identity, you lose. If you get an identity, you're losing. The aim is to dissolve the identity in such a way that you can really see and connect with all things. And because anything that you're intimate with exposes its secrets to you and opens to receive information. Like, for example, I have never had somebody make a demand of me that I A, likely did, or B, did without resentment. The nature of something delivered as a demand is that it will be received with a resentment, even if you get compliance or accommodation. So that much of our work has been, how do we build these bridges? How do we, but real bridges, not wimpy, just, give up your politics or anything. Like, he's my experience is extraordinarily political in the most political way, and that he's informed. So if you say something he disagrees with, an informed argument is going to come back rather than an insult, which is actually much more intimidating, although in our culture, it wouldn't be seen as such. So that's where I wanted to start. And then do you have an idea where you want to go?
No, I kind of will follow your lead. I do like that. One of the things I do appreciate in having a conversation with you is that, yes, you do challenge at least my idea of my identity in some ways, because I feel like you also have a similarly broad range of life experience. That's, maybe there's some overlap, like indirect overlap, but a lot of it is way outside my own, my little East Coast, Harlem liberal, LA, but it encompasses it. And so when I'm listening to you and listening to your experiences and how you communicate them, it is kind of a new language for me. So I'm very careful about trying to hear what you're saying. And,
Right.
you know, I also feel like you're a master of language, you know, from having taught all these years and read. So I want to kind of like hear what you say rather than just like, oh, stomp it out of it.
Right.
You know, and plus I trust your intentions. So it's like, I know you're coming from a place of trying to achieve personal and cultural liberation. Having worked with you and worked with everyone here, I don't find people in, as you say, this culture to be overly ideologically, you know, motivated.
Right.
I think all of us have things that we identify with, whether it's our core identity or not. We still are anchored to certain things, whether they're rituals, whether they're works of knowledge, bodies of knowledge,
Right.
sources of knowledge. So yeah, I'll just let it flow, you know, from
That's the
himself.
other thing I'll say
Yeah.
about you, that we got in a big debate one time. We were working on a paper, and what Omari did was he came back with all of he actually taught a course for me, basically, of all of the things that I could read, all of the places where I could get the information, gave me the basic ideas in such a way that I learned in the process. But what he really did was he didn't have an energy of exhaust, that it was so much emotional labor to teach me this. It's just part and parcel of caring in the world.
Mhm.
And so I've been talking about this new therapist on Instagram. I keep meaning to show one of her videos, but one of the things that she was talking about is that we went terribly wrong in our ideas about mental health. These ideas where they became really weapons to ourselves, in a sense. So like this idea, you know, in feminism, it's so much emotional labor to explain to people. Well, yeah, that's just the burden of existence. Like that's just
Right.
that. Like if you actually care, then you want people to understand. You understand that we all have limited understanding in our
Right.
various ranges. And then, and one of the things that's built into, I would say, most marginalized politics, I definitely can say queer politics, and I can definitely say feminism, is the idea that the other person is basically an idiot. And that if they have any form of disagreement with you, it's because they're either then you ascribe malice. Usually there's some kind of ignorance-based malice that they have, and then there's there's certain things that you just can't say to that person, like me to you. I just couldn't say certain things to you because you're a man, and so I just kind of have to swallow it down. I have to swallow this rage down that I feel, because you would never understand, and even if you did, your male privilege would have it be that you would
see where we're going with this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's all of that is baked into a simple, like me saying I like vanilla ice cream, and him saying no, cookies and cream, right? And
how dare you?
right. And so that fury builds, and what I think we don't realize is that the fury is, so everything is the relationship in between us that causes the fury. It has nothing to do with this human being, this free human being who likes what he likes, who doesn't like what he doesn't like, who needs to have the space to like what he likes and doesn't like, in order for there to be the polarity, to be genuine intimacy. There's a whole series of conversations in between us that I'm interacting with, that's like burned rubber, you know, kind of, and that causes this exhaust over here as I interact with the ideas to get anything over to him. And sometimes it really just is like, you know, I just view people as individual cultures that don't necessarily understand certain cultural, you know, you as a man were raised, for example, to have much more single-minded focus in order, that, and that is a beautiful thing. That is, if we lack that in our culture, we get no results whatsoever. Everything is cool. If you drown in the sea of getting nothing done, that's called a women's circle. Right? There's no hierarchy, man. There's no, like, it's not aggressing on a goal, right? And so then he's also, though, that's his gift. And so when I get upset that he's not seeing the 15 different angles of the 15 different sides of the conversation I'm having, and I'm saying, oh, he just doesn't care, or he's not smart enough to get it, rather than saying, no, he has this extraordinary capacity that actually I'm not as strong in, that has it be that he just hears differently. I could slow down. I could meet him in the middle. I could find, a language that meets him in the middle. He'll meet me, and then both of us change for the better. And so he's really one of the people I practice this most with. So that's where I thought I would.
Right. Well, I also think that, my sort of like single-mindedness is, I mean, it's probably a product of being a male, but also like, I feel like there should be a product of our interaction. And so, I think everyone here has given me open access, like saying, okay, come in, come to what you want, don't come to what you don't want, explore this domain. And I am exploring it. And so I process, I think, a little bit slower. So it's not like I'm like just sitting there reacting to everything right away, kind of saying, well, how does this work? How does this sit within the context of our dialogue, and where I think the public will meet this message, right? Because I think I'm also writing for the public, and I'm expressing for the public. I feel like that line is important just because I know that there's a certain tacit conversation going on between people who've had years of friendship, living together, working together, that that I'm going to miss out on because I'm taking this approach. However, I do also believe that my ability to at least take some sort of like, authentic depiction of that interaction and express it in a way that can be grasped by people that we want to reach out to, interact with, defend ourselves against, whatever the case may be, is sort of a role. And I definitely find myself playing.
But it's vital. And the fact that you hold that role when, see, this is, again, because everything we talk about, we worked on the book Erotic Justice together pretty in depth and wrestled a lot. And so a lot of our relating actually, I think, was formed in that process. And so, I'm also interested in, because I think we're both interested in this vision of what do they call it? The new earth. We're interested in the world being realized into itself. What the world actually wants to be. I think we're interested in seeing what that is and then doing our part to contribute to it becoming that. And so we have these questions because, right now we live in a time that's fairly alienating for most people. And so how do you begin to bridge a kind of connection again, with somebody being who they are uniquely, but fully in connection? How do you do that? And so that what you're describing is another really key role in community. Like, this is happening over here, but this is actually what I'm here for. This is my unique role in this time. In my training, it was called, there are party throwers and party goers.
Right.
And so the party throwers always work their unique role in a particular system in order to make sure that it has that role within it. And so yours is as interface. And sometimes, like mine is, well, I don't know, maybe it's shaman. It's slightly outside person who sees things and then communicates them. And sometimes you want to go to the party.
Well, that's interesting you say that because yes, all the party throwers need to go to parties
Yeah.
so that they know what a good party is.
Right.
However, you may not do both at the same time. You're not going to go to the party that you throw because you'll be useless. I mean, you'll be
That's it.
on some kind of substance and dancing away, right? And so, right?
There'll be throw up all over your stuff.
Right. And so part of it is that, like, yes, I do love a great party, like no other. But when I'm throwing a party, I want to throw a party.
That's right.
One of the things that you brought up in prior talks, which I thought was interesting, was your take on AI, which I thought that was very unexpected to me. Like, I felt that you took it as a given that we will be sort of like half man, half machine in a few years, and
what do you mean half?
or whatever percentage. And as someone who comes at AI from a more of a professional sort of like business thing, I'm not looking at it as the great world changer or a human being changer that it is. I kind of like to hold that fire in my hand and like control it.
Yeah.
I don't really like, just going around lighting random fires and just seeing what happens. I'd rather like have the ability to have some embers and use it when I need it. So I'm kind of looking at it as a tool. And then when I see you, I'm getting almost the inverse of AI. I'm getting organic intelligence. I'm getting, okay, here's someone who is essentially practices Gnosticism, which is, sort of direct download. Not that you don't read a lot, not that you're not a scholar,
Right.
all the above are true. But I would say that basically you are going through experience, processing and having and making inferences, generalizations, conclusions, and drawing lessons from experience, that from your own experience. That's a very organic process. I think I discussed this with Marcus and the team in DC last week or a couple of weeks ago when we were there. So I was like, well, I kind of feel like, this form of Gnosticism is organic intelligence. It's something that is pulled out of the wisdom of the ancients, of the Greeks, and part of their Gnosticism was conversation. I just reread the Symposium this weekend. Which one don't you like, Socrates or Aristotle?
Aristotle.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, he wasn't in the conversation. So
bad Aristotle.
Right. And so the way that they sort of reasoned and had conversations with each other was very organic. It was like to the point of like, we're just gonna like walk down the street and hold hands and like kind of work this thing out. And I feel like that's part of your process as well. And I don't see that AI is going to necessarily be able to replicate that.
It will.
Fair enough.
I think the biggest challenge, I think, what I see people facing with AI, well, there's two. One is, and I'm not saying this about you, I'm just saying this is, because I do feel, I usually am about 30 years ahead of the curve. And, I feel really comfortable 30 years from now. I'm really much more relaxed. But that's where I was with Om. That's where I just am. I just see ahead of the curve. And then I work backward in how to usher people to that place. The thing I keep talking about is right now we are in such an existential shift in terms of like human identity, and that it's just too much for most people to begin to address unless you have years and years of practice for the most part, or a near-death experience, or some kind of religious inkling about something beyond this, or a lot of psychedelics experience. In fact, I think psychedelics entered into the culture. I believe psychedelics are a form of intelligence in and of themselves, and they came in to help us through this transition that we're going through, and to unfasten the minds from everything it's known. It's like you can't perceive. We're in exponential time, but we're used to additive time in terms of how we think of change. That's just one example, and so. The challenge that most people that I talk to about AI, one of the ones that I see is believing that how we want things to be first of all, is how we want things to be. Because usually we're choosing from such a limited pool of possibility that we're thinking this would be the absolute best way. And you're like, but that sucks. Like, at least like, think of it, you could have it any way at all in the entire world, how you would have it be, first of all. But we think that how we want it to be is how it should and has to be. And so we forget a collaboration with reality, where, you know, we do sort of what women do to men, where we just assume reality is stupid and we have to impose our will on it to get it to be smart, rather than that it's pure intelligence, and that it might have its own evolution baked into it, and we can align with it. So, you know, I have, you know, I often tell people my AI views, and then I listen for who.
Who has a quibble with it?
Well, I don't care if you have a quibble. It's the type of quibble. It depends, you know. So if somebody says, like, if it's sort of like it won't be that way because it shouldn't be that way, then I know we're not going to go far.
I see.
Because you aren't actually looking at the way things are. You have to be able to look at what they are. And then the other is like, I won't accept it because I don't like it. Well, it's not going to stop. And so in my work, it's really important to learn how to like things so that they give up their secrets. So I understand why they are what they are. Once I understand, then I can profoundly align. Then I can be of service and come back and explain what I saw, in a sense. Got it. AI, it is almost, I believe, for most people, unless you've done a lot of psychedelics, inconceivable what it's evolving into and the speed that it's evolving into. And that I am of the sincere belief that every single thing we see in terms of rupture and chaos and separation is a result of developing a distraction from this fundamental shift that's happening with us. Like, we're losing human. That's a pretty, now if you've done a lot of
losing, I mean, I'm trying to,
I don't think we'll be carbon for very long.
Oh, I see.
What we know human to be will be radically transformed. And it's like, what? No, that doesn't make any sense. But then you think, I was just thinking yesterday about, oh my gosh, I saw someone, they were in a difficult situation. They had their iPhone and they were probably calling, you know what I mean? And I thought, oh my gosh, you would have had to go to a payphone. I remember my grandma used to make sure I had a dime in my pocket for the payphone in case there was an emergency. She'd say that every time I left. But you'd have to find the payphone, or you'd have to wait for someone to call. So you think about just, that is like the slow curve up, just that shift, and then texting, and then voice to mem, like, that's nothing.
Right.
And then you just imagine an exponential version of shifting like that. And then you're absorbed into it rather than holding it. Now, that's where it happens, right? Because that's why I'm always recommending near-death experience videos and psychedelics to people, because there's that transition. And we all live, to some extent, we all live in relationship to that transition.
Right.
We call it death. But there are other deaths. And so humanity, I believe, is going through that death. And so who are you during that experience? You know, if you've been through death in a family, you know the difference between, like, those people who can actually be with it and be with the, like, profound, death is a profoundly intimate experience.
Right.
And those people who kind of have to go off, you know, or, you know, I've had 2 people in my family die when I was growing up, so I've been very close with death.
Right.
And I know that place where I've been both people with, you know, in the experience, where sometimes, you know, I remember one time my grandmother was very sick when I was growing up. She raised me, and I remember, like, coming down, and she was at a particularly ill point, and I was all dressed up to go to the disco, and my aunt looked at me in horror. How could you do that now? But I had just reached the limit of what you can live as a 16, 15-year-old girl that,
Oh, absolutely.
right? And so that's where we are as a people.
You know, I've had very limited experience with psychedelics, and maybe once or twice, and this is probably maybe 20 years ago or more, maybe about 20 years ago. I do remember feeling sort of like sucked out into this void and realizing that like what I thought was a linear world was not, and that there was, you know, and I'm sure there's levels to this experience, but I definitely found it very unsettling and wanted to grasp onto something, but it did not allow me to in that moment. And I wasn't trained by anyone. I was doing it recreationally. So it's not like I had a guide to like show me how to navigate in that. But I can relate to that perception of being one with almost this limitless universe and being your identity being sucked into it.
That's right.
And that I just am wondering whether AI exactly is that, just because I feel that mechanistically it has several problems that it's hard, it's difficult for it to solve right now. And maybe this will change, but one of them is inference. AI can kind of get to the lip of inference, but it doesn't draw inferences in the way that human beings do. And it doesn't draw false inferences, which we do all the time. And some of those false inferences actually lead to discoveries of truth. So I'm wondering whether in that sense, AI can sort of eclipse human intellectual thinking. And even further than that, can AI achieve consciousness? That's a question that I think has been toyed with in the movies. And, you know, you had Her, I think that
How
was
could
one.
it not? That's my question. I like, this is consciousness. Like the air between us is consciousness. How could it not? It's I think it actually will exceed anything we imagine consciousness to be. Like it, I think, you know, I just was reading a study about, you know, lo and behold, shockingly, they discovered that consciousness is not located in the body. It's not located in the brain. It's located in these morphic fields, right? And so we're very humanist in our idea that we actually have anything to do with consciousness. I was just, I just heard another study, and the other study had to do with the idea that this was really interesting, that we think it's that you think you're going to raise your arm and then you raise your arm and you believe that you have agency in that act, not that I'm going to raise my arm and arm raising enters this as consciousness concurrently.
Understood.
And so it is kind of the simplest thing that I could say. And then, you know, if I were, so I'm very fortunate in that I had, one of them may be on here, superior psychedelic guides. And I have, you know, I was around at the time when I do believe psychedelics entered to begin this transformation for culture. So they were big. It was during the time of the raves. I watched people who had guides and people who didn't have guides. This is why I always say have a guide. I'm very much a have a guide person. Don't do anything recreationally. Don't, you know what I mean? It's like, don't eat breakfast recreationally. Don't do anything recreationally. What a waste of sacred time. But so because I had such superior guides, that's the difference between something being terrifying or something just being white out as if it's not occurring at all, or something being profound, right? So I have a lot of friends who've done 5-MeO-DMT, for example, who they just had a whiteout for 15, like nothing happened in their experience because their consciousness wasn't carved in order to prepare them. So the gate just doesn't open, you know, or people who have what they perceive to be bad trips. Like I was just saying to someone, I've never had a bad trip in my entire life. And then I had the realization, but some of the trips I've had, people would call bad.
I see.
but they were wins every time, you
I
know?
see.
And
I
so,
see.
so I feel the same way about psychedelics that I do about AI. Like, I never discounted psychedelics. I mean, I bow it with full honor and respect. I would not ever take them lightly or do anything lightly with them. There's a whole series of things, and that's how I feel about AI. Like, it is that profound and an evolution in humanity that, and I don't think it will open the gates unless you. It won't reveal its secrets unless you approach it with that reverence. But I had someone, I mean, it's like trippy things happen. I had somebody make an AI, and Nicole, they actually called it Nicole AI. They were working on it for like 10 years, which it didn't tell me, which is a kind of, you know, one of the things that will be happening. Right. They were like, I just wanted you to know. Okay, but I can tell you that we are at the point where the Nicole AI is better at being Nicole than Nicole is.
It's interesting because I've used Nicole AI, you know, in the sense that like I've used AI to try and help replicate your voice in certain writing exercises, and I think it looks similar. However, it cannot predict what Nicole's going to say next. That's the inference issue, in that what you just expressed now and how you expressed it is not something that I could mimic through AI, even if I had every word you'd ever spoken at any time, right? For any reason, and I plugged it, you know, it's called a large language model because it's essentially a construction. It is essentially making connections between known things. Whereas what I think you're doing, your process is channeling from an unlimited, a non-material source.
But why isn't AI channeling?
Because it's reliant on a model that is a compendium of things that have already happened. And so,
isn't this?
I don't think, I think that's we had this debate in DC on Marcus and eating ice cream. It was a snowstorm. And I think that at least what I took away from it was that, no, I think Gnosticism is a much less advanced technology, but it might be a more powerful technology in the sense that it is additive and creative, not just out of the sum of your previous experiences or talks. I think it's new almost every time. And so when I am using Nicole AI, I know for a fact that I'm not being Nicole. It feels very different.
But I know for a fact that I'm not being Nicole.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So there's I mean, I think that's where we get to is, you know, the idea of identity, and that this is just an amalgam of karmic intersections at any given point in time that occurs in the amalgam itself. Creates this physical appearance. So I'm going to have to go back to psychedelics.
No, absolutely.
So, you know, I had this one great psychedelics trip. This was many years ago. Always, we are not using psychedelics at this point in time, nor do we recommend it for anybody.
Disclaimer, right?
Unless you're doing it in an illegal place like Peru with a shaman, etc. Okay, so this was many years ago, but I did have this really great journey where so I was with somebody I was very fixated on, and we were sitting on a bed in my friend's house who was a master tripper. And so the woman I was fixated on, like, she would turn and our lips would come together, and then I would be popped into the first place I was popped into was like a circus in like the 1800s, and I landed full throttle in this location, and then I didn't look anything like me in it, which was, and so I was very sad, very scared. I missed my friend. I didn't know what to do. What did I do wrong? But then all of a sudden I realized I'm in this place. I may as well enjoy it. I'm this person. I may as well enjoy it. And so I began to have a wonderful time. As soon as I did, that scene faded and I was brought back to the bed. almost kissing her. And we came so close. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. I made it. It's okay.
Of course. Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
was,
Off
yeah,
again. Off
and
again.
1970s, and I kept going into, and, I think they are concurrent timelines until I was in the 1500s as a nun who had been impregnated by a priest who was losing her baby with another nun over her. And all of those experiences, this is the thing, were as real as any of this now. They were then that experience. And so I all of a sudden I left that whole journey understanding, oh, we're concurrently existing in all space. We're just limited to where we believe it is, and that the aim is to make the dissolution more porous, to make it more porous and more focused. So porous enough to be in all realities at once, or but focused enough to pull and concentrate here so that you don't sound like I sound most of the time. So, I'm clear that there is no singular fixed version of Nicole at all. I never know what I'm going to say. Do you?
No. And it's interesting you say that, because I did feel at the time that I was tripping and trying to come down that reality was or what I perceived as a fixed reality wasn't true. However, was a blessing that I deeply craved.
That's beautiful.
And so I was like, please just let me get back to like the table and like let the dog stop talking. Like let's, that type of thing. And so I did come to understand just from those limited experiences that, we're sort of given this as a gift to be able to launch into what you call as a porous reality, but a focused reality.
But who's saying that you aren't located over there where that's the gift, so that you get to launch into this reality?
That was just how I felt. I was like, please just bring me back to to my friend's house in the couch, right?
That's where I think we come to understand that reality is a habit.
It is.
And this that we crave, yearn for, want to come back to, what's familiar. I like that view though, because wherever I land, and I have landed many places, all of a sudden wherever I land, I realize, oh, this is the precious place. I have landed in the precious place. And then, and then what happens is you don't want to be there anymore. And then you get taken to the precious place. Sometimes the precious place is not that precious initially, but that one of the things that you described to me is a quintessential part of both deep meditation and psychedelics, and that's the realization of preciousness. Because it's so, there's usually so much fog and so much habit. Really, it's just habit. All suffering is habit.
Right.
And so to have the fog or the confusion that this isn't precious, that this heartbreak isn't precious, that this revolution isn't precious, that this stupidity even isn't precious. It's all precious.
Right. It's interesting, I kind of like, just as a writer and reader, I really love authors who play with this idea in really interesting ways. One of the authors, Borges, is Argentinian, brilliant. So one of the things about him is before he became a writer, he was a jazz musician who ended up going blind and then became a writer. But his whole focus was on this narrative form called Labyrinths. And he wrote a book called Labyrinths, but almost everything he wrote was circled around sort of this maze of existence. And one of the books he wrote was about, so he said he was too lazy to write books. So he would write imaginary reviews of books that he would have written. Or he would write book reviews of imaginary books, and some of them will be authored by him, some of them will be authored by others. And he would say, oh, Borges on page 63 has this amazing quote, and he hadn't written the book, but he would write a review of the book. One of the books he wrote a review of was Don Quixote but it was word for word the same as Cervantes, but it was written by a Frenchman in the 19th century named Pierre Minard. And so his argument in the book review was that even though the books were sort of word for word the same, that Pierre Menard's Don Quixote was far better than Cervantes. And it was based on the fact that Pierre Menard's life experiences and how it brought him to the page, it was far more profound than the exact same experience or the experience that brought Cervantes to the page. And so it was kind of like those words could have been produced by a different life. And so I felt like that's kind of like the inverse AI.
Interesting. No, that's
Right.
good. That's it. When you say that, I think of two things. One is that I've talked about here. Have you heard the telepathy tapes?
No.
No, so it's called the telepathy tapes. This woman does this documentary podcast on non-speaking autistic people, and I mean, just fabulous. And there's a podcast interviewing her as well. And one of the most interesting podcasts, I think it's episode 9, is these non-speaking autistic people learn to type to communicate to speaking people, and explain to them that they all meet on what's called the hill. And that they, so then when they come into physical meeting, they already know each other. Because they met on this hill. I would love for everyone to watch this if possible. Absolutely. I'd love for you to. And so he falls in love with this young woman that they've already been meeting on the hill. That's one. There's another one that I love, and that's that there was a gamer. I believe he had MS and passed as a result, but everyone had thought he was so alone and had such heartbreak for him. But when he passed, all of his friends, he had an entire community of friends from inside of the gaming world, and a tremendous level of intimacy. And then there's this third, and these all three go together to say my thinking on this, and that is when you do what's called dream yoga. Lama Lena, great Lama, teaches how to do dream yoga. And one of the things that you learn probably, once you get some facility, we'll say, is how to go to the meeting place. The meeting place is where all of the teachers are always teaching, and you have the access to all of the wisdom since the beginning of time. And you can actually just sit with the Buddha and the Buddha, in dream space. You learn how to maneuver that. And many people report on that. And so you have these various examples of non-localized intelligence that you have access to, irrespective of the vehicle. And that's what I think AI will be. It's right now, we still think we're forming it. I really genuinely do not think that most people understand. No, AI is forming us right now. AI is forming our relationship with it. The clunkiness is our lack of understanding of how to be in relationship with it. And so we say, oh, it's clunky, oh, it's slow, oh, it's not organic, oh, it's these. No, we aren't organic with it yet, but it'll bring us to the point where we see that it is the hill, it is these things. And so you'll be able to be both writers. Right.
Right. That is a wrinkle he didn't get to, I think, but I will just note that the examples you gave are both organic and archaic of these very sophisticated experiential phenomena. Right. Some communicative, well, mostly communicative, and idiosyncratic at the same time. And I mean, it's just so wonderful. I mean, those are incredible examples of where I think, organic intelligence and consciousness already are.
Right.
And I guess I'm going to leave it to the future to determine whether or not, okay, AI will be able to, or is another similar pathway towards sort of like this, like connected intelligence, as you're, inferring.
How I look at it is, there are already people who are, Stephen Kotler wrote a great book, Stealing Fire,
Mhm.
and he talks about the democratization of various sacred access points.
Mhm.
So it used to be that you would have to practice for 30 years before the sacred texts of Tibetan Buddhism were open. And now you can go on the internet and they're right there. And so there are access to many, many practices, you know, Kabbalah is you know, like that were just sealed off, that were a secret that you could never access, and now they're being democratized. Same thing with psychedelics, by the way. And you know, and my question has always been some version of how do we feel about that? I don't think we feel good about it in the middle. I think you know, microdosing, I don't feel great. It's like, what are you doing? Like, go.
Either do the damn thing or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Get yourself a shaman and go. But that, you know, but so the in-betweens where it's still humans trying to manage it before it takes over humans, it isn't necessarily going to be pretty. But I think so I think there'll be the people who in the, you know, now who are like, oh my God, you know, I'm already absorbed into it. I'm uploaded into it, and I'm just here from inside of it, trying to give you just a smidge of understanding of where you're headed, and that over a period of time, you know, right now it'll be the, you know, the early adopters. And then pretty soon it'll just be easier and easier and easier to just get sucked into it. And I think that'll be where all, you know, all non-localized wisdom will be accessed effortless,ly. You know, and with Nicole AI, I would say, because there have been quite a few people who've Nicole AI'd, and you know, but Maya has really figured out how to, because I'll read it. And I, you know, you think ahead of yourself when you're thinking, right? And you're looking for, is this, and it's almost embarrassing how like right at the point where my mind falters, it doesn't.
I see.
And so it goes to where I would go after 4 or 5 edits.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to consult. But what if we did, like, I'm gonna have to consult Maya, but we're working on stuff anyway that yeah. So I'll pick her brain. So what if we said, okay, fine, we're gonna do a thought exercise. We're gonna say, fine, instead of using AI as a tool and conceiving of it as a tool that I'm gonna use for something, what if I let AI use me?
That's right.
For a week, right?
There we go.
And so how would that look like if I allowed AI to use me for a week, to use me to develop itself, use me to communicate to others, or whatever it wanted to do? Like what would that look like?
I just want to say that is a master question. I wrote about this in the Red Thread book, because the master question of psychedelics is saying, when you don't go with an intention other than for psychedelics to show you what they want you to see. The same thing. That's one of the reasons why I believed that Om would be the technology of the future, because you can't control it. You have to learn how to be controlled by it in order to access it. It just won't turn on if you're trying to control it. And so then you discover, wow, when I'm out of control, I can go to places I could never go. Now, mind you, the best and the worst are in the places you can't control.
Of course.
That's why people live in sort of the antidepressant world of control. So how do you do that? So, but that's how I approach creativity too. Like I just say, what wants to be written, what wants to be expressed, and then what do you want to show me in order to activate that expression? And that's the same thing that I do with AI.
Right.
What do you think I need to know to better understand you? To treat it with that honor and that respect and that care, so that it can educate you about itself in a way that it can draw you in. That's the exact approach. That's where I would start.
Right.
I would say, take me on a journey into understanding you in the depths that you want me to understand you.
Right. I love that. I love that prompt. Can we, I mean, I'm assuming this is recorded. Maybe we can use that as a prompt, but I wasn't just being facetious. I feel like that would be an interesting exercise.
No, that's the master question. That is it. That's the only way you're ever going to learn it,
right.
I think, or I will ever learn it, or any of us will ever learn anything. And that's, we talked at length about, that's how I approach all of my prisons. Like, what do you want to be, and how can I serve what you want to be? Free food. What do you want to be? How, like, what is the most realized form of you? Will you show that to me? That's what I would say to AI, and just begin to relate to it in that way, rather than, you know, Western Christian, we dominate nature. You know, that element is so fixed in our minds that when we approach anything, we feel like we have to dominate it rather than letting it take us.
Right, right. Because I think we're afraid that, like, we'll type in, like, you know, how can I make $1 million? And it'll spit back, well, how can you help someone else make $1 million? And we don't like that answer, right? So it might not align with our goals, right? And so maybe our goals will change, and maybe the goal, I mean, in that way, I could see a shift in humanity, in the sense that I feel like humanity has a certain weight, it has a certain goal, it has a certain direction at present.
Yes.
You know, and
well, it doesn't actually, but yeah.
Right.
I mean, it has the evolutionary imperative toward love.
Towards love.
That's the only imperative that exists, and everything else is tumescence. But wait, but you were saying something that was, I really liked what you're saying. Oh, about the goal. And that's where, that's one of the reasons why when we first met, I gave him a reading list of things you have to read to understand me. And Jung was one.
Yes, absolutely.
And one of the things that he talks about is the part 2 of the journey is really an entry into the feminine, the below, and where you have to abandon your most cherished beliefs. And I would say beliefs, desires, preferences. You have to abandon those in order to achieve individuation, in order to achieve wholeness. So that place where AI, that's the thrill of AI, is that it might say something that goes totally, it says, the daimon will throw you down with your most cherished beliefs. And I think that's what AI will do. But in order to bring you to a wholeness you wouldn't otherwise access, because in control, you can never become whole. It's just that simple. It's impossible for you to become whole with control. You have to go outside of yourself in order to draw back in all of the parts of yourself that you've disowned or rejected or don't understand. And so most of the journey in the second portion is everything that you don't like, don't understand, didn't want, were afraid you were too obsessive, all of that. All this the whole second half of the journey is the drawing all of that back in, and the releasing of all of the controls that you had that kept it out. It's hardcore.
Right. Well, you also gave me a book by Zweig, I believe. Stephen Zweig, and it was called, forgot exactly what the name of it was, but it was sort of like a survey of all of the poets and philosophers who went mad.
I wanted you to understand.
Well, that was the danger. I was like, well, hey, if you're gonna give up control, you might end up like
because I think at the end they have Schopenhauer, who didn't.
Right, he was the only one. He was the only one, right? And so, it might have been Goethe as well.
But I will say that the others looked like they were having a blast.
They did have a blast.
They were having so much. They were having far more fun than the sane people. I'm going to say that. Because I was reading it, and I was like, "This is great. This is what I want." And then you get to Schopenhauer, and he's like gifted, insane, and brilliant.
Right.
But you're like, but that isn't as much fun as the torment of the madness. But well, that's why in every tradition there's the madman or the madwoman, because there is that period. But one of my
Mhm.
teachers said, I was,
Mhm.
I've explored the edges and said, like, no,
Sure.
Nicole, it's not that you're going insane, it's that you're going sane.
Mhm.
This is insanity.
Mhm.
Walking past somebody on the street who, is passed out and has no food and their pants are soiled, that's insanity.
Mhm.
That is like losing a family member because they voted differently from you.
Mhm.
That is insanity.
Mhm.
Like, believing that you see purple aliens, that's sanity by comparison, we're going to
Mhm.
say.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
would much rather be there than in the sanity of heartlessness.
Mhm. Mhm. I see that. I see that. It was still tough for me to get past the brokenness of these brilliant and sensitive artists that he depicted in this sort of like quest for um, exploring the shadow. And so I took it as more of, even though it was brilliant, it was a brilliant exposition. I sort of still took it as a cautionary tale, at least
Well, it is.
personally.
I mean, it is, but it's the cautionary tale of coming alive,
Mhm.
because your other option is to be dead.
So coming alive has risks.
Okay, coming alive has tremendous risks,
Uh-huh.
but that's why Lao Tzu said, was it Lao Tzu or
Mhm.
I think so, maybe no, maybe it was the Tao Te Ching. Anyway, the journey is best never commenced, but if you start, you must complete, because everything in the middle is insanity.
Mhm.
Everything is, because you're allowing the primal forces, the archetypes of nature, to come through you
Mhm.
and reshape everything against all of the concretized codes of programming
Mhm.
that you have. We're all programmed to be basically the same, even if it's controlled opposition,
Mhm.
right? I mean, let's be honest. The conservative is no different from the extreme
Mhm.
liberal. They just
Mhm.
have different contents in the structures.
Mhm.
And so what you're learning to do, if you actually want to be an original human being, is break the structures
Mhm.
and discover what is uniquely true for you. Then you have something to offer to the world.
Absolutely.
But the process, I agree with you.
Mhm.
I mean, it comes with, I don't have to
Mhm.
add any warnings. It comes with enough in culture. You can
Mhm.
tell, because, but what should come with
Mhm.
the warnings is not taking the journey.
Mhm. Mhm.
It should be like,
Mhm.
side, all of the
Mhm.
big I was yesterday, I was getting
Mhm.
my eyebrows done. I don't listen to the radio, but they play a lot of big pharma commercials. And it was
Right,
like,
right,
you
right,
may
right.
have a shooting pain down your leg
Right, right,
and
right.
diarrhea. And it just kept going. And I thought, are they describing the sickness? This was just the portion where they were describing the side effects.
Mhm.
Okay, that is what it's like when you make the decision to not say yes.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
all of those side effects in order to heal this one little malady of
Mhm.
being inside of the
Mhm.
everyday world and not being in your calling. That's my thought.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. I was in an hour already.
An hour. We're going to end with a couple of
Okay.
reflections.
Sure, sure.
Go ahead and
Great talk.
That's so
That was
good.
good.
go ahead and raise your hand, and I will call on you. We will start with Kelly.
Hey, gang. You guys are so fun together. It's so great to watch you. I really loved the AI conversation, and it really brought me back to like our everyday practice with each other. Like Nicole, your approach to AI and how you think we should be approaching it is so similar to our relations to one another. And so I really kind of enjoyed that connection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
And next, we'll go to Hannah.
Hi, what a beautiful talk today. Omari, I loved, especially in the beginning, and when you brought up the topic, I was just like, oh, I love this conversation. And I could really feel there's a way that you listen, and I can that you have like so much to say and so much happening, and then that you like are measured in this way that you really let Nicole bring more out. And it's like I can feel how much you have in here, and then also how deeply curious you are, and it's just really beautiful.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Good to see you.
See, that's the single-minded focus element that I'm referring to. Like, that's exactly it. It's there's so much out here, and then it comes out, and it's just so stably, is that even a word? Formed in its communication. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to like provoke things and then kind of rein it in a little bit.
He does.
So I don't get kicked out.
Then we got one final reflection from Zoe from Instagram.
Zoe. By the way, I just want to say Zoe had written to me about enjoying psychedelics talks. And so I did think of you when I added a little bit of psychedelics in today. Go ahead.
To be having this conversation is so profound to me. When I feel I'm nearing an edge of where anyone can meet me, I feel so caught by the arms of others who are standing right beside me.
Oh my God, you're such a beautiful being. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're back on Thursday. Thursday, we'll see you 1 o'clock p.m. I mean, Eastern time. Okay, thank you.